Hi, everybody. Welcome to the new normal. I'm your host, Lisa Davis, aka Litecoin Lisa. It is a mighty Monday. So I want you to jump over to den.social, join the mighty lair. Over there, you can join the conversation every Monday so far. And hopefully, we're going to keep this up. Our buddy William, you guys know him as I Am for I Am, has been posting amazing, thought provoking conversations. And you can jump in, you can earn cryptocurrency and be part of it's kind of like a DAO. We're playing around with it. Hopefully, we can make it more active, build a community there. And hopefully, you guys can hold me accountable of being more active and and using that tool over there more too. So join it, den.social. All you need is an email to sign up and join the conversation. So we will be right back with I Am for I Am. And today's topic, are any of them legitimate presidents? I don't know. Right after this. Welcome back. I Am. Good to have you.
How's it going, everybody? I got my Boston Tea Party tea here, drinking it. It's cheap.
Good to have that. Good to have that. My son is reading, oh gosh, what's the name of the book? Oh, Amos, something about slavery. Anyway, it's set in like 1780 something. And they just mentioned the Boston Tea Party. And he's like, what did they do? He goes, Mom, no taxation without representation, but they're not talking about much of a tax. And they're talking about being mad about another country taxing them. He goes, but like our country taxes us way more than that. And people don't do anything about it.
Oh, so, what a bright kid you got there.
It is quite the, interesting.
I like his critical thinking, questioning everything.
Yeah.
Cool.
Good conversations. Good conversations.
Yeah. Well, we just had this massive election, and all this conversation has been going on for this campaign. And I thought, good night. We can look at years past to understand what we're doing today and where it's all going to fall. Because who knows what the future holds for Trump? Even though he was elected, what's going to happen on their J6, right? I don't know. But it really brought up a lot of questions. So I thought, I'm going to go back and look at these past elections. But let's go back to the first one, which is, of course, George Washington. And I opened up a can of worms. I went down another rabbit hole, Lisa.
All right. I love it.
Another rabbit hole. Anyway, so let's look at our past to understand what's going on today. And the question is, have the U.S. presidents been legitimately elected from George Washington all the way to President-elect Donald Trump? And let's find out. So I got my screen here shared, and we'll go through this. The very first election was very, very different. There was no political parties. There was no campaigning. There was no campaign. And there was no primary election. So it was just one big boom election with electoral votes, obviously, but there was no campaigning. And I went, wow.
So it wasn't just the popular vote. There were electoral votes.
Well, it's all based on the electoral vote. So yes, there was a popular vote, but who cares about the popular vote? It means nothing. So throw that out the window for right now, anyway.
Yeah,
it does mean something, but for right now, let's look at the first election, because it really is the electoral votes that make a difference, right? That's what chooses the president, is how those votes are counted in Congress. So, we have to look at, let's set it up. Let's set up the first election. So here's our framers, which were delegates from the Articles of Confederation, from the nation states, and because the 13 colonies or the 13 states were nation states. They weren't just states. And they, in the summer of 1787, they go to Philadelphia, and they, again, they are delegates representing their nation state or state, and they go to make amendments to the Articles of Confederation, because obviously it's not working. We have basically no federal power. The states are doing whatever they want, and it's failing miserably, so we've been taught, and they got to come up with something else. So the framers, founding fathers or framers, I'm going to call these folks the framers. I'll call the founding fathers the Declaration of Independence signers, okay? The framers are the ones that created and came up with the U.S. Constitution. The picture that you see here, they're in Philadelphia. And notice that the windows are closed to your right and your left in this picture. People can't see in what's going on. And it's in summertime, must have been hot. So what they're doing is they're doing this. They're creating the U.S. Constitution, and they're having a big debate about it, what it should have, what it should say, all that good stuff. And you can tell mine's pretty worn out. You know, the office of the presidency, the electoral college, the legislative branch, the judicial branch, all of those good things, right, are discussed. And they vote. They vote on it, and it passes because the delegates voted 39 of the 55 delegates who attended. Okay? Keep that number in mind. 39 out of 55 voted for the U.S. Constitution. So they march forward with it, right? It goes off to the states for the states to now ratify it, and it's done, and these kinds of things. And now they're moving on to, well, we got to elect our president. And what's kind of funny is because in that meeting in Philadelphia, they're talking about the office of the presidency, and who is there but none other than George Washington. They're secretly, but not secretly, kind of openly secretly, knowing that he's going to be the first president. And they're talking about the duties of the presidency and what his role and what his powers would be. And I thought it's kind of interesting that, you know, even though I admire the man, George Washington was an amazing person. We need more of them today. I'll take even just one. Having said that, though, I think it's just kind of strange, right? You're in a meeting and they're talking about, well, we're going to create this government, and we're going to need a president. It's probably you, George. And this person should, what do you think, George? Do you think this person should have this power or not this power? And they all debate. It's kind of strange. Anyway, so 1788, it goes back to the states to pick their electors. Now, you know, for the electoral college. Now, each state can do their own thing. They can do it by popular vote. Their legislature could pick the electors. You know, if a state, let's say, has, you know, I don't know, 9 electoral votes, maybe they do a hybrid system. Some of the states did a hybrid system where you voted for, you know, your top 3 or something, or top 9 out of a list of 20 names. And then the top 9 that everyone voted on became the electors who would go and vote for the president. And so in February 4th, in 1789, the electoral votes were cast and completed in each state for the first time. And in 1789, in March 4th, that's the birthday of our country. Or is it a country? It's really the government. And pardon me, there's a helicopter flying over. They're looking for me, Lisa.
I'd say don't go outside.
Yeah. So March 4th is the birthday of actually the government, the federal government, because that's what their first day of operation was. So it was March 4th, 1789. So in April 6th, they had their first session of Congress. And what do? They, of course, are going to count the votes of the Electoral College. And George Washington wins. Wow. Surprise. And here are the results for 1789. Hopefully you can see all that.
Yeah, that's great.
So George Washington got 69 of the electoral votes, and John Adams got 34. He was second place, running in second. See, another couple of names there, like John Hancock, about halfway down.
Mm-hmm.
George Clinton. Ooh, wow. What an interesting guy. He was a governor of New York, reelected over and over and over and over and over to be governor of New York. And don't tell anybody, but there were some funny things that happened to some of those ballots, if you know what I mean.
Interesting.
Yeah. So anyway, he is governor, and he actually gets some votes to become president, or at least vice president. So this was in the 1789 election. And of course, John Adams becomes vice president. Why? Because the electors actually voted for two people. They voted for the office of president, and they voted for the office of vice president. And that's how it was done in the first vote for 1789. And of course, George won all of them. Everyone wanted George, and rightfully so. He was a true leader, and he got us. He won the war, right? But he was kind of a silent, tall figure, and an amazing man. And we should be grateful and happy that he was our first president. And he set a good example. So then we fast forward to 1792. George doesn't want to run. He says, listen, because there was no campaigning. Remember, back in the day, it was uncouth. It was actually unethical. It was the wrong thing to do to say, excuse me, I'm a narcissist and I want to run for president. Or, excuse me, I'm a narcissist and I would like to run for, U.S. Senate or Congress or whatever.
So it was a burden on you to run, and like, who would want to be president? That would be a terrible thing.
Right. So, our faithful president, the first president of the United States, George, he sits down with Madison. He has a really heart-to-heart with Thomas Jefferson and says, I don't want to do this. I hate it. All this bickering and arguing about federalism and not federalism, because the first actual election wasn't really about George. Everyone loved George. Everyone wanted George. The first election was about this, the U.S. Constitution.
Mm-hmm.
That's what everyone was talking about. Should we really vote for a president? Should we really install this government, even though it's been ratified? Should we do this? Well, all right, it's a done deal. We're going to have a federal government. We have a federal government. Okay, well, let's try to limit the powers of the federal government. Yeah, that's what we'll do. And George didn't want any part of this. He was up there. I think he was like 60 years old or right around that time. And that was well beyond the life expectancy of that era, right? George didn't want to be president. And Thomas Jefferson pleaded with him, said, just give us 1 year, just 1 year, and then you can resign.
Oh, wow.
And for the betterment of the country. And he was a Federalist. He believed in the U.S. Constitution.
Mm-hmm.
He truly did believe in the U.S. Constitution. And he went ahead and did it. He ran the second time, but it wasn't really a campaign. But he won, now it was 132 electoral votes, and he won all of them unanimously. So 132 votes, and he got all 132 for the first slot, president. And John Adams, again, got the second slot, or VP. And look at who's number 3 there. The guy I was just talking about from New York, George Clinton.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So, but that election had the political party starting to creep in and push and fight. Mm-hmm. So 1796, George isn't running, and it's now John Adams versus Thomas Jefferson, basically, and it's close. And they weren't of the same party, but
so now we have parties.
Along. Yeah. Now we have parties,
election.
But they're not as strong as like they are today, right? But it's ugly. It's ugly. And so anyway, Thomas Jefferson is number 2 man, vice president. Oh, look at that. George Clinton got 7 votes. How about that? Well, Samuel Adams beat him, and so did Edinburgh. So anyway, so this was the real time that now we had John Adams as a Federalist, and Thomas Jefferson was the Democratic Republican. So he was trying to limit government per se, and John Adams was a strong Federalist. And it was too. Another key point is you can liken this of today because the people of the city were the Federalists, and the people who lived out in the country were the Democratic Republicans. Interesting.
So the people out in the city wanted more government regulation, more government control, and the people in the country wanted less.
Yeah.
Wanted more freedoms.
So things don't change.
The government to take their hands off. Okay.
Yeah, central powers. So we now go to 1800, and now it's Thomas Jefferson and Aaron Burr. And
neck and neck.
Worrisome. We got a problem. Houston, we got a problem. Houston didn't exist. Well, at least part of the U.S. It did. The natives were there. So Thomas Jefferson's and Aaron Burr tie at 73. It has to go to the Congress, and that's what it says in here. And they have to decide. And Thomas Jefferson becomes president. But they know they got a big problem here. The Electoral College is, well, it's screwed up. It's messed up. We got to fix it. So that was really a big priority during that time. And the passage of the 12th Amendment to fix the Electoral College and the president and the vice president to separate them. And the parties were a huge issue too back then. So we have the runner-up problem, and that was in the U.S. Constitution, Article 2, Section 1. And what was hilarious was they were arguing about this because it was really a party thing. Well, we can't have a president of one party and a vice president from a different party. And that's what they were facing, really. Can you imagine back when it was, Adams and Jefferson? Imagine Trump winning, and now his VP is going to be Kamala. Can you imagine that government? That's what
actually that would be to the best of we the people in general, because the people would have the most voice.
Right. You would think. And as a matter of fact, Lisa, you're talking and thinking like a framer. You must have been there in Philadelphia because that's what the framers said. The framers' intent was they thought that the VP should be someone who is well known, maybe nationally known, someone who is certainly there on merit, has the ability to run the country.
Well, that's where Kamala wouldn't make it.
Has the experience, has public trust, right? Is a leader. This is who they wanted as the VP, because if something were to happen to the president, the VP would be able to step in. Now, of course, the framers didn't think about this whole party system was going to, ignite like, gasoline on a fire. So, but we're so tribal. That's what we are. That's who we are. We have to own up to that. And so they wanted the two most capable people to be president and vice president and be elected to those positions by the Electoral College. No matter how the states picked their Electoral College, they thought, and that was, it's a legitimate way of thinking. It really is. If you take the party system out of it, right? And if you think that country first and not party first, getting your priorities straight. So, but they had to fix this. So that's what they did. They get the 12th Amendment and they basically say, okay, time out. Forget this whole 2 votes for the Electoral College. You guys, whatever, you can put a president and vice president on the same ticket over here and over there, and everyone will vote, and the president and vice president will be on one ticket, and may the best person win. Or, well, what it will be is it will be chosen by the Electoral College, by their vote. And that's why we have, from 1804, we have it different. That's why you don't have a Trump presidency with a vice president of Kamala Harris, right? It's a good thing, I guess. But, oh my goodness, Lisa. So here's that big can of worms. I went into a rabbit hole and I fell into it. And let's rewind it back a bit. Back. Remember I was telling you about how it was voted on in Philadelphia? 39 votes for the U.S. Constitution by
Yeah.
the delegates.
Right.
And remember, each of those delegates, those were delegates sent from the states, the nation states, to Philadelphia to come up with amendments to the Articles of Confederation to fix the mess. All right. But the Articles of Confederation says everything has to pass unanimously.
Oh my gosh.
And that's where, like, Ruh-roh, like Scooby-Doo.
Yeah,
Ruh-roh.
it did not pass as a unanimous.
Yeah. So the question is the U.S. Constitution null and void because it wasn't properly ratified? It wasn't done.
Doesn't each state have their own constitution?
Well, they do, but that's within their state, their nation state, or whatever.
Which doesn't apply to our national voting then.
Right. That's completely different. We're talking about the next level up, the Federalist. So the Federalists say, oh, well, time out. It passed. It was ratified. Don't go there. Don't go down that rabbit hole. And, if you start digging on the internet, like use Google, you're not going to really find this whole conspiracy or dig deep.
Use pre-search.
You got to go elsewhere and look elsewhere.
Yeah.
But it's kind of interesting. So, ladies and gentlemen of the jury, I am the counselor attorney representing the Articles of Confederation. And you folks that are out there in the listening public, you are going to hear my closing argument.
Okay.
And then you will hear my opponent give their closing argument that the U.S. Constitution was ratified and it is the law of the land. And Lisa, you're the foreperson.
Oh gosh.
Okay. So you have to listen to my closing argument, which I really haven't practiced. I wish I practiced it more, but oh well. Here we go. So have your attention, ladies and gentlemen of the jury, if I present the closing argument that the U.S. Constitution is null and void. Here we have it. The Articles of Confederation was the law of the land, and we sent delegates down to Philadelphia to fix and amend the Articles of Confederation. We did not send them down there to throw it out the window and put in a new document, a whole new form of government. We asked for an amendment to the Articles of Confederation. That is not what they did. We also had the rule and law of the land that said it required unanimous vote from the states. And all 13 states, and I remind you, were nation states. They were their own nations. And Lisa, I know you are planning on moving to another state. That would be like moving to another country. If I, living in Texas, decide to move to Mexico, I'm moving to another country. That is no different than how it was in 1787, 1789. And so these were nation states, and they all had a vote. And it was decided that any change or amendment had to be unanimous. Furthermore, the meeting was in secret. The doors were often closed. Our delegates reported back to their representatives and their government and stated that there was a lot of secrecy going on. There was a lot of debate, which is understandable, a lot of scrutiny, but it was not being transparent. The people, there was no widespread support for this or that within the room, but there wasn't widespread support on how this new government should be created and passed or amended to the Articles of Confederation, done in secret. Item number 3, and I have like 25 of these, but I'm only going to give you the top 5. Okay. Overstepping delegates' mandate. Again, I tell you that we sent delegates there to Philadelphia to meet and amend the Articles of Confederation, not throw it out the window, not discard it. That's exactly what the new Constitution did. These Federalists also were radicals because they wanted a special legislation, and their critics were strategically bypassed. In other words, some states were bypassed because their legislations didn't ratify it. It just went to a popular vote. And vice versa. So there were all kinds of shenanigans, shall we say, that were going on in this ratification process when it was sent back to the states to be ratified. And I remind you that these nation states, all 13 of them, had to ratify that unanimously. That is not what was happening. It was prone to manipulation. As a matter of fact, our friends in Maryland, the nation of Maryland and Rhode Island, had issues. Rhode Island, for example, and it is well documented, there is evidence to this, that they were threatened with trade restrictions, economic isolation, if they weren't going to help and continue to ratify the U.S. Constitution. They would be an island amongst themselves. They would be the redheaded stepchild kicked out of the house.
Wow.
That's what was going on. There was a lot of economic pressure that was being pushed and forced on these 13 nation states. And again, it had to be unanimously voted upon, and it wasn't. Even as recorded, that only 39 of the 55 delegates voted for the U.S. Constitution. So, ladies and gentlemen of the jury, I must contend and state that the U.S. Constitution is void. It was never ratified, and therefore, George Washington was not the president of the United States. As a matter of fact, the United States doesn't even exist. Now, we do not disparage the man. The man fought and an amazing circumstance. He was a great man, a man of stature, a man that should be revered by all generations from here forth and beyond. And we have nothing, bad to say about his support for the U.S. Constitution. We just believe that it was not done properly. And so
I have a question.
Yes, go ahead.
So were there at least some or one representative of the 39? Was there at least one representative from each of the 13 states?
Yes.
So you could get into the word salad and say that there was some representation from each of the 13 states. So it could be considered unanimous amongst the 13 states, although not all of the delegates were there.
I think I misunderstood. Are you saying that if, for example, if Maryland had 3 delegates, 2 of them
at least
voted,
one showed up?
Yes. So all 13 states were represented. Not that all 13 states voted to pass the U.S. Constitution.
Right.
Okay. So
okay. So you're saying not all voted to pass. So that's where it wasn't
certainly not unanimous. There may have been, like, say, Maryland. Maybe if there were 3 that were sent to to Philadelphia, maybe 2 voted yes and 1 voted no. That's possible. I don't know the specific details to the votes of those 39, and I apologize for not knowing that. That is possible.
That's okay. I was just thinking that maybe if some didn't attend, at least of the ones that attended, at least every state was represented, and of the ones that attended, everyone voted unanimously. I
Correct.
thought maybe some didn't attend or something.
However, the ratification was more than one step. The ratification was beyond just the idea that the 13 states voted in Philadelphia and that was it. It was all and done with. That wasn't the case at all. What it was that was like kind of step 1. They had to vote on the wording of it, right? And then they had to go back to the states, and each state with the people and their legislation had to vote and ratify the U.S. Constitution. And there were some people who didn't believe that for example, the Bill of Rights came much later. The Bill of Rights are not included in the original draft of the U.S. Constitution. It was passed in 1791. It wasn't passed in 1789. So there were some that said, okay, if you will protect we the people and our constituents within our nation state, if you'll protect them by putting out the Bill of Rights, then we'll vote for it. Oh, yes. we're going to put together the Bill of Rights and we're going to amend the Constitution with the Bill of Rights. Absolutely, absolutely. Guaranteed. Well, it wasn't present at that point in time. So there was more pressure. There was kind of a switchery. It was a promise. It wasn't on paper.
That didn't exist yet. Yeah. Interesting.
All right. So now the closing argument for the U.S. Constitution. And if I could change my voice or had a different outfit, I'd do it. But and I'm no attorney. I'm just
I'll switch you. I'll put you. You could be up here instead.
There we go.
All
okay.
I can do.
All right. As it should be. I'm above you because I'm representing the U.S. Constitution.
There you go.
All right, ladies and gentlemen of the jury, may I have your attention as I present the counter argument to my colleague here who says that the U.S. Constitution was not ratified. I think that that's ludicrous. I mean, we're 235 years into this. Hello. It has been adopted. As a matter of fact, the first president, was George Washington. And during those times, it's well documented that the arguments of the time was, should we really continue on with this federalism and have a strong federal government because the Articles of Confederation were not working? Should we do this or should we not? And it was really, should we go back to the way, or should we keep it the status quo, Articles of Confederation, or should we go ahead and elect George Washington as president and go with this U.S. Constitution? And that's what the vote really was, the first vote. Because we all knew we loved George Washington. We all knew that he was a great leader, and we all knew that we could trust him. And we all knew he had the experience to do the job and do it well. And that's exactly what he did. He did the job very well, so well that he was voted unanimously, and so well he was voted unanimously a second time to do the job of the President of the United States. And he, the President of the United States, this man of great stature, this man who is a hero to many, to millions, was the first president, and he supported the U.S. Constitution. The U.S. Constitution is a legacy. And if you want to call it a legal precedent, then so be it. That's fine with me. A legal precedent basically says that it's been the law, so therefore it's been ruled in court over and over and over again. It's a legal precedent from here and so forth and beyond. And that's what we have here. We have a U.S. Constitution that has been amended, like the women being allowed to vote. We've amended it to prohibition, and then we undid prohibition. So it is a changing document. And it has been, in other words, all the 50 states now recognize this as the law of the land. I don't think you could find any pocket of calling themselves somewhat of a nation state and say we adhere to the Articles of Confederation. No, they don't. They all believe that this is, it's pretty much a done deal. It's been like this for 235 years, and we have precedents now. It's continuous. It's ultimately a durable framework. It's a durable framework of government, irregardless of how government has acted in the past, of ways we didn't agree with. But we have elected president after president after president, and Congress and representatives in Congress and senators over and over and over. We've approved and had our representatives approve, Supreme Court justices and all kinds of appointees. So we have a track record, we have a history, and we have a durable framework, the U.S. Constitution. There ends my case.
Oh, man, I was with you right up until the point you said we gave women the right to vote, because that 14th Amendment actually has nothing to do with that.
But there's other members of the jury who are women, and they might want to believe that.
Well, I'm a woman. I'm aware of what women are. But actually, speaking of...
I can't tell you what a woman is, Lisa.
Speaking of George Washington was not able to vote, it's my understanding. Was it George Washington or was it Abraham Lincoln?
George Washington, he married into money. Martha.
Yes. So Martha was able to vote because she was a landowner. It was about giving people who were not landowners the ability to vote. It had nothing to do with what your chromosomes are.
Mhm.
And so, like, that's the thing is like, well, just because word salad has been perpetuated and people were told that they were following a structure, it doesn't mean that it was legitimate. Just because people, if you tie an elephant as a baby to a stake, and then when it grows up, even though it could bust free, you can still tie it you can put a rope around its leg and it will still stay there.
Right.
And it's not even attached, but it believes that that law is true and real.
Mm-hmm. That's what we've
So
been taught.
it doesn't make it real.
Maybe it's just a piece of paper.
Maybe, yeah. Now, my understanding of what I believe of the Constitution is that it was based on the Magna Carta, which was actually like, I can't remember which king, Louis the 14th.
You got
Pushing back on the Pope.
Recall.
Yeah, on the churches and all that. And he was saying like, no, these are, the freedoms that are God given to people. And I'm not going to let the church continue to use me to push on the people and to enslave the people. And so to me, that's what the Constitution is pushing back on government and those kind of imposed slavery of the system and reasserting our God-given rights. So
can you imagine fifth graders being put to the test? Has the Constitution been ratified? Yes or no?
Wow.
It's crazy. It's never taught. This never taught in history. There is some strong arguments either, both ways.
Well, and when you go back to where you were talking about holding it to its own accountability, to its own rules, if it's supposed to be unanimous,
they were sent there to be delegates to amend the Articles of Confederation. Not throw it out the window. And they threw it out the window early. It's interesting. Now, having said that, the founding fathers borrowed from a lot of philosophers and, knowledge of the time. Locke. We talked about the social contract. They were wise, brilliant men, and they knew. They were well learned. They read a lot, and they understood what did and didn't work. They really did not like direct democracy. They knew that was like you say, a wolf or three wolves and a sheep voting for what for dinner. They did not like it at all. Neither did Plato and Aristotle, going all the way back. So one of them they did, but what we have is I could see how there would be a push to get this U.S. Constitution to work, because things were not working and the country was vulnerable for the Britain to come back and take it over, win, and all would be lost. So I could see there was concerns that way. There was a lot of debt that was owed from the Revolutionary War. So there are all kinds of issues at hand that really needed some unification, and the only way to do that was to more a look towards a central power or centralization, which is federalism. So I can understand how they might cut some corners, shall we say, in the ratification process, and they needed all 13 states to do it. And, so Rhode Island, well, you know what, you're going to be off by yourself. You're going to have to defend, isolated.
We're not going to trade with you, all of that kind of stuff, all the threats.
Yeah. So I could see that. Well, it did happen. So now I guess what comes back to my point is, does it really matter? Is 235 years ago, we live under this regime with a U.S. Constitution. I would argue that the U.S. Constitution is dead in D.C. It's not dead in my heart. It's not dead right here that I believe that it's a 5,000-year leap. It's one of the reasons why we have been so successful as a country, not just because of our natural resources, but because of the freedom and liberties we were given. And we've pissed them away. That's for another video. So ultimately, the precedence has happened. It's beyond legal precedence. It is how we've been taught and shaped and continue forward.
We have to stop giving them away, right?
Yes.
That's where going forward. I don't know. We're in this weird fuzzy time right now, and there's all these dates coming up. People are talking about, I guess the House and the Senate both went Republican, but the transition of power of that hasn't. We're still in the 217th Congress or something like that. I don't know.
Mitch McConnell. Ugh.
Yeah, it doesn't go to the 218th until sometime in January. I can't remember the dates.
The January 20th. I don't remember the date. Yeah.
I can't remember. I think it's like the 8th or something weird. It's before Trump gets inaugurated. Like they come into power and then they have so many days that they could put bills and have things ready to go for Trump to sign. So that could be very interesting to see, because if they are both working together, if there are two, the House and the Senate, both Republican, there is no reason why they shouldn't be, getting together, getting this country, working for this country, and ready to go to work on the 20th. We shall see.
Let's go back to think of the swarm. The swarm is pulling the levers behind the curtains, and there are, shall we say, patriots that we love and trust that are in those positions of power there in Congress, but there's so few of them, so there's so few, and to be honest, we are so few in many ways. I like to say we outnumber them, but our ideologies are outnumbered by the normies, if nothing else. So we are in unusual times. We have a big financial debt that hurdle, and who knows? Maybe they couldn't stop Trump, so they're saying, okay, well, we'll go after him economically then, or maybe he cut a deal with the deep state back in June and said, yeah, let's put Biden up there, make him fall. And then it'll be easy for you to beat Kamala. We'll make sure she's instated. And then that way, Trump, you're in. And there was a deal cut with the deep state. And that's why there's a Pompeo lurking around. And that's why, Scott probably won't be named, leader of the Senate.
Speaker of the House or whatever.
Speaker of the House, Johnson is, all that, all of that intel super state is that, the swarm is really in control.
So the swarm has replaced the swamp.
Yes.
You think? Interesting. We shall see. We shall see. Thank you so much for doing this. And I love all the history, and I love thinking about things in a different way. I think it's great for us to, all have the truth about history and really kind of unpack things ourselves. So you guys join us on den.social. Go in there, make some comments. Let us know what you think. Has the Constitution been ratified or not? Give us your thoughts over there on the Mighty Lair. And vote up IAM's comment as well. So we'll see you guys next time here on The New Normal. Take care.